Hi, I'm Daniel. She's Ruth.
Hi.
And we have decided to do a bunch of videos from Israel. We're in Tel Aviv, sitting in Ruth's gorgeous little new patio. She just moved from London. And we have so much to talk about.
We do.
And we're going to be, I wouldn't say spamming, but like sharing a lot of content because we both feel that with the whole world talking about what's going on here, there's a lot of not just misinformation, but curiosity for people that actually want to get an insider look about what someone living in Israel lives through, feels, thinks, and there's so many things that people don't know what to believe. I am personally quite curious. I'm very curious, actually, by nature. So when I have friends in Ukraine, I have friends in Russia, I have friends in Korea, I have friends in South America, I have family in North America, South America, Europe, everywhere. So every time I speak to someone that lives in a region of conflict or there's a big news story or an election, I'm always really curious to get an understanding of like a local take on the turn of events before making my mind up, judging. Everyone knows that whatever, like all the corporate media or government-led media has like a bias or is always kind of like agenda driven. So this is an opportunity to speak and for curious people and curious minds across the interwebs to get a different take for people with no agenda and just, we live in a country of 9 million people, the size of Wales or New Jersey if you're American. So kind of like with everyone talking about what's happening in this region, do you want to hear our experiences, our thoughts? Anyway, so I just think it's really good to take a moment, and I'm done with my little monologue.
Yeah.
But just to say, like, why are we doing this? I mean, that's kind of like what I'm doing. It is kind of like to share something because I hear so much bullshit and so much confusion, mostly for people that have never been to the Middle East, never been to Israel, never been to Gaza, Lebanon, whatever, the West Bank. So anyway, this is the purpose of having these little chats. We're not paid. We're not a news agency. We don't expect to monetize this. We don't want to become celebrities. Like what? So anyway, that's my take. Ruth.
Yes. So, hi, I'm Ruth, and I have recently moved back to Tel Aviv, and really have moved back because of the anti-Semitism in the UK. And I've been here 2 weeks. It's been a real roller coaster of emotions, and it's important, I think, for me to get my personal experience of living here out there, and also to discuss with Daniel the much bigger picture going on both here and in the rest of the world.
So you say you've moved from the anti-Semitism in the UK. What do you actually mean? Because lots of people say like, oh, I feel like a lot of people feel like, oh, anti-Semitism is just, number one, you're just playing victim and the Holocaust, and Jews are the eternal victim. Number two, is it a political weapon to justify what's happening in the war? Number three, like if it's like, this evergreen card that you can pull, like when you say you've moved from the anti-Semitism, what do you actually mean?
So I think when I was here in Tel Aviv when October the 7th happened, and when I got back to London, the first thing I saw were posters of our hostages ripped down on predominantly Jewish streets.
Right.
And that's when it started. I was horrified, absolutely horrified. Then these pro-Palestinian demonstrations were happening every other week. And at first I was like, you know what? I am all about free speech. And if that is what if everyone is very concerned about the people in Gaza, then I was okay with that. What transpired quite quickly was that these protests were actually being masked as something else. And hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets of London every week with Hamas flags, with Hezbollah flags. These are not this isn't about free speech.
Right.
It was about pure anti-Semitism and hatred to Jews and the Jewish state.
Okay.
And
without going too much deeper into like the protest association, what do you want to get from this to speaking out, let's say, in the internet? Like why do you think it's important to speak up?
Because I think the narrative in the UK, especially, again, I'm coming from a UK point of view, is very skewed. It got to the point for me where I couldn't switch on the BBC, Sky News, because this anti-Israel narrative was just driving this hatred.
Right.
And it's happening in our media, it's happening on our streets. And for me, it became just too much.
Right. Interesting. Good. So I guess over the next few weeks, months, I don't know how long.
Yeah,
I mean, like we'll see like how long we survive in this. But the thing is, like, here there's so many subjects and everyone has so many questions. It's like, what's this whole Iran thing? What's happening in Gaza? What is it like, IDF soldiers, and the way that the narrative is framed and the war is framed, especially for anyone that has never had the opportunity to be in Israel or in Gaza or in the West Bank or in the whole Middle East. I just think that there's always so many questions, and you keep hearing especially all these terms about like the occupation, the colonies, the this, the apartheid. You keep hearing all these really inflammatory terms. So I just think for me it's also about not just debunking, but like giving people a little bit of
insight.
Yeah, it's insight. It's insight from the inside. Yesterday, actually, I went for lunch with a friend who had a visitor from Milan, who's like this girl who was like her first time in Israel. And she's not Jewish, by the way. And I asked her, so what's your first impression? I love asking people like, what did you expect and what did you get? And she was like, wow. She's like, it's like, I guess for everyone that just comes or has been to Israel right away, she was like, I'm really surprised because all the signs in the streets, they're written in Hebrew and Arabic and English. She's like, but everyone keeps saying like this apartheid thing. I'm like, she's like, and then I go to like a shopping mall or anywhere and it's like there's Jews and there's Arabs and there's this, and I'm like, that's Israel, that's the reality. So
there are 2 million Arabs living in Israel with all the full rights that we have. And I think the world does not understand that.
Yeah.
Or refuses to understand it.
I'm not sure if he refuses to understand this. Like, if I had never been here and you keep hearing that on every news bulletin, protest, everything, I would also like assume it's true.
Yeah.
I just think people have forgotten how... everyone says, including myself, not everyone, it's like, I don't trust the media, but secretly you kind of do.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. Brexit.
Yes.
Everyone in the UK, all the media, is never going to happen. It's just bullshit. Yeah. It's bullshit. I believed it was bullshit, and I believed it was never going to happen.
Yeah.
So I keep saying, I don't trust the media. But because you're bombarded to these messages from all sides, same with the Trump election, everyone is like, oh my God, this is a knife's edge, Trump, Kamala, Trump. It was never on a knife's edge.
Yeah, it was always going to be Trump.
Yeah, and with Brexit, I don't know if it was on a knife's edge or not, but it was not like, the media was so complacent that. So then like when people get like a slap in the face, they're like, we cannot trust the media. So if these things happen about issues in the country that you live in, amongst people you surrounded, and you still believe that kind of like falsely skewed narrative of the events or the predictions, I mean, what the fuck do you expect people to think about the Middle East or like Israel or Gaza in a place they've never been? So if they keep hearing all these like, stop the apartheid, this and that, well, if you are able to believe something that is completely misguided about the country you live in, how do you expect people not to trust the media when they're talking about, some war in Gaza or in Ukraine or like some South Korean coup or whatever? So we do trust the media.
Yeah, I just want to bring Iran in at this point because, again, I think, yes, we've got, Iran fund these terror proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah. the Houthis. They surround Israel. They
Right.
have been funded to primarily destroy Israel.
Right.
And they are the head of the octopus. And we hear
Right.
this from various Israeli sources, and we understand that that's true. But
Well, they save themselves. That's their objective. It's
they
like, you don't
say
need
it,
Israeli
and
sources. They proudly boast about, we want to destroy Israel.
they do, but for the rest of the global media, they're still not quite understanding that Iran are the head of the octopus.
Well, that's always my question. Do they not understand it, or do they just not want to portray it as that? Because I think everyone that frames, that's when people say like war on Gaza or war in Gaza, it's like, it's not a war on Gaza. It's not a war against Gaza. It's not. Yes, there is a war happening in Gaza, but actually it's a war against Iran.
Yes.
Through 7 different fronts that Israel is fighting.
And
again, it's not a war against Lebanon. It's not a war against Yemen. It's not a war against, it's a war against all those Iranian proxies that have taken control of these places. But the moment you stop framing it like that and you say war on Gaza, people actually believe that this is some war to neglect Palestinian self-determination. And it's so far removed. It's so
far removed.
And also, like, it's really funny because I always feel that the people that feel it mostly in Western countries are the people that care the most about self-determination. That's why usually all the left-leaning people and countries that are about self-determination, the right use of pronouns, LGBT rights, all of that, they're like, we've been denied of self-determination and this empowerment for generations, so we want our Palestinian brothers and sisters to... And it's like, I always say, it's like, is that kind of like applying first world problems to a conflict, in a very poor area when the conflict had nothing to do with it. It actually has nothing to do with self-determination. It actually doesn't have anything to do with land either. It's a completely different ideological...
It's got nothing to do with land.
It's an ideological, theological war, like driven and funded by Iran. So you're right. The moment you stop framing it like that, and the moment you just don't take like the wide lens and you're like this little micro war in Gaza, which is a tiny place, and Israel is a tiny place, and not understanding what's happening.
The bigger picture and the fact that this is a war against the West. We're just the first in line. Israel is the first in line.
Correct.
And I think our politicians globally haven't really taken that seriously. I don't think they have fully understood what the bigger picture and this what the conflict is really about, and that is the destruction of Western values.
I think they do understand it.
Go on. Yeah,
I think they understand it. Politicians, I think, like the broader public doesn't, because of the way the media portrays it, but I do think Western leaders understand the importance of Israel, of this war, and as that kind of like first front of defense against the West, similar to Ukraine, actually. That's why I always find a lot of, when I speak to people in Ukraine, I always find like a lot of common ground and that understanding that, they know that, even like if Ukraine is invaded, that's not the end of Russia's aggressions. And if Israel is invaded, it's not the end of like chaos, like in the Middle East or like, Southern Europe. So, but I do think politicians understand it. I think they always, but it's also like in the Second World War, they, it's better to be kind of like willfully blind or just like always not rock the boat. At the end of the day, they're only there for like 4 years at best. So they don't want to start a war. They don't want to end the war. But of course, they understand the threat of like the Middle East in their ground. I mean, if you look at the amount of like M15 or M6, like N15 threats from like Iran, it's literally the number one. They have like 20,000 people in the list of like the terrorists or like on terrorist watch and stuff. They know it. The police know it. The security services know it. The politicians know it. They just don't want to rock the boat, which I also understand. And it's also like before World War. So like the only moment where they really go, that's why they kind of like they support Israel. Really, they do. But publicly, they want to kind of like go with the narrative of like, but let's be fair. But let's be like moderate, responsible, this, that, the other. A little bit like with Ukraine, actually. They say like, do this, but don't use those rockets. Do this. So Which, you know, like you say, in a way, also like prolongs wars, because you could argue as well that if this war had been fought in full force, actually fewer people would have died, both in Gaza and in Israel.
Yeah.
This would have been over, hostages would have been returned, and, you know, Hamas would have been toppled. But having this environment of like, yes, but no, but constraint, but don't go into Rafah, but don't use this rock, and then this. I think that's actually what prolongs it. So I don't know, but I do think Western leaders know it. I do think it's a war on the West. I do think it's a war on Western values. Most people are blinded to it. I would also argue that most people here were blind to it.
Yeah.
And nobody expected it. So I think it's also the type of things that until you don't have like literally like a gun on your head, you don't really understand it and get it. And I also think, for example, in Ukraine, it's like until they don't invade your country, until they don't throw a bomb into London, into Germany,
they're not
going to get it. Like people are not going to understand it until like they are under attack.
Yeah. So I just sort of want to go back to yesterday, where we found out that more of our hostages have died in Gaza.
Have been executed. Yeah.
Have been executed in Gaza. And how we both feel about the hostages and this situation, because for me, until we get all of our hostages, both living and the deceased, back into Israel, we do not have a country.
Well, I think
a bold statement, but
we do have a country.
We do have a country, but will it ever?
No, I mean, I don't think the war is going to end until the hostages are not returned. So if it takes 10 years, the war is going to take 10 years. And that's what, actually, going back to what you said of the protest, I understood they had nothing to do with like the safety and the well-being of Palestinians,
because
the moment they're incapable to ask for the release of the hostages. Anyone that actually cares about Palestinian life, they would be like with the biggest banner in the world saying return the hostages, because they know that the moment that happened, you know, like the fighting in Gaza ends. So I do think, and of course Hamas know that as well, and that's why they don't release the hostages, because in a way that's the only like leverage they have.
The only leverage.
That's their bargaining chip. So and that's why also, like, in a way, all those Protestant people, they're not pro-Palestinian, they're pro-Hamas, because they never called for the release of hostages. So I do think the war will last for as long as the hostages are released. And I also think, like, you know, but also like in England, if like they literally, you know, kidnapped 500 people and took them hostage, also like England would be at war, and they would be like bombing the fuck out whatever country took it. And it doesn't matter if it's like France or Iceland or...
But I think a hostage taking situation in the UK is so far removed from the UK life, they can't even imagine it.
Right.
And so here we are in the situation we are in, and when I think of the army, when I think of our army, the People's Army, in order for that to prosper and for people to want to be a part of it, we have to bring our hostages home.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I just think, like, here, like, nobody is confused about it.
No,
I just think what was really upsetting is what you said earlier, which is like, you know, that a poster of an Israeli hostage, and by the way, there's like Christians, Jews, Arabs, everyone, like Thai, like everything. There was like literally everyone, black, white, gay. Is that everyone?
It was people who were here in Israel. They didn't care whether they were.
Yeah, but again, that's terrorism. I mean, someone blowing up in an Ariana Grande concert, like, he doesn't care if he's like, you know, old, young, women, male, kids. But anyway, I just think what's really upsetting was, first, when on October 8th, 9th, people say like, oh, it's all fake, I don't know what to believe, these are fake, this never happened, this and that. So that kind of like denial, that was very telling, because actually, like someone described it, it was almost like Holocaust denial in real life. And the other thing that was really upsetting was, like you said, is like people ripping down hostages. So it's like, if
I found that,
well,
just it absolutely got to my core, my gut. It was incredibly hurtful.
Well, because if a poster of a hostage in a European city last less than a poster of like a missing cat or dog, you've got a problem, Europe.
Yeah.
And I just
Right.
think that was kind of
And
like,
that was so visible,
and
so
the penny dropped for
early.
so many people. Everyone is like, well, actually, we might not be as safe or as loved or as liked as people thought. And the people around us might not be as tolerant and
Yeah.
loving and multicultural as we thought. So I just think it's been like a real awakening for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's where we're gonna have lots of conversations. I think like we've touched upon like a million things, from hostages, Iran,
Yeah.
this, anti-Semitism,
Yeah.
and I just think like over the next, hopefully, few little podcasts or videos or whatever, we can expand on them a little bit more. And I just think like the ambition is to just like take one of those subjects and then have a conversation. And the other thing I would say for anybody watching this, which I'm sure is going to be like millions of people, is actually to ask, because like, you know, I'm sure there's going to be some comment box with like if there's a specific subject or question. Or I also was going to say that one of the reasons that I really wanted to do this and what I was very excited of doing with you, Ruth, is that we have like conflicting views on many things.
We do.
And I just didn't want to speak with someone. I just didn't want to have like one of those podcasts that is like, we both think the same.
And we both agree on everything.
We agree on everything. We have the same backgrounds. We have the same life experience. And you know, and I just think like that's what's going to be exciting, because we disagree in lots of things. We have different perspectives on lots of things. And
by the way, I think that also is largely because Daniel is a man and I'm a woman, and so I think we both come from our gender points of view.
You see, I disagree with that already. I think our disagreements have nothing to do with our genders. But there you go. That's what I mean. We don't. I like. We have different perspective. We've grown up in different places. I was born in South America. I've lived in Spain. I've lived in England. I've lived here. So like yes, it's true. I was like born male. I don't know what.
And I was born female.
So whatever. So
I think one thing to mention is that actually we have both worked at the BBC.
That's true.
And so, and I think both of us have been not completely surprised by the narrative that they have chosen, but again, have been very disappointed by.
Yeah, actually, on the BBC, I would just say that, it's not so, I mean, again, that's kind of like the line. Again, I always compare it to, just because instead of taking into this anti-Semitism, you hate Jews kind of thing, I would just say, no, this is kind of like, it's what comes with a pack of left-leaning media. So I just think it's kind of like the same way that they speak on a certain way against Brexit is the same way they speak against Israel, is the same. So, and again, for example, I would be against Brexit. So I actually agree with that view, mostly because if, before Brexit, it's because there wasn't a Brexit and we were out of the EU, I was able to study in England and work at the BBC. So as a beneficiary of the EU, of course I would be against Brexit.
Yeah.
But my point is that the way the media is skewed, I don't think is necessarily, it's kind of like comes with the pack.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the anti-Trump, anti-Israel, pro-EU. So it's kind of like, I just think like the skew is more about like the people, working there. And I just don't think I don't think it's anti-Semitic, but I think it can lead to anti-Semitism. I don't think it's, you see what I mean? I think it's kind of like an anti-Israel bias.
It's an anti-Israel bias that then if you're not knowledgeable of Israel, it quickly turns into anti-Semitism.
Correct. Agree, 100%.
Yeah.
On that, I can agree.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So anyway, would there be like a lot more about it? But as I said, I think like if people want to also like...
ask us questions.
Or subjects, ideas, topics,
or something you want us to
even
talk
guests. About. We can bring a soldier, we can bring a sergeant, we can bring like a refugee, we can bring like a Arab Israeli, someone that has been evacuated from the north, from the south, someone that from the Nova Music Festival.
Yeah.
Israel is a very small country. Everyone knows, everyone is connected. Everyone's like 2 degrees away.
Yeah.
And so is Gaza. That's, by the way, why I think that everybody fucking knows where the hostages are.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Everyone knows.
They do.
Everyone knows. So here, like also
Yeah.
like everyone knows. So if anybody wants to like, you know, is curious about like us speaking or like chatting to someone, and in the meantime we'll just be rambling among ourselves,
Ourselves.
just like
Yeah.
which is always great.
Yeah.
Great.
So thanks for watching.